The Black Mall Mine lived up to its name, gouged into the ancient heart of the Appalachians. It wasn't just dangerous, it felt mean. Old-timers whispered tales, fueled by cheap whiskey, of tools vanishing, lights dying at critical moments, unsettling whispers echoing from solid rock. Most dismissed it, exhaustion, the mountain settling, but nobody liked the deep levels, especially level 7. A mile straight down, level 7 was a hot, damp, claustrophobic hell. The air hung thick, tasting of wet stone and stale machinery. Water dripped constantly, not clean, but a slimy, mineral-heavy seepage staining everything rust red or sickly green. Shift Lead Earl Davidson pushed his crew hard down there. Stocky, grizzled, with eyes that seemed to swallow the lamplight, Davidson cared only about tonnage. His crew was the usual mix. Mac, a wary veteran who trusted the mountain less than the company, and greenhorns like Billy, barely 20, his fear sweat a constant presence in the cloying air. On this particular Tuesday, they were chasing a promising coal signature. The continuous miner machine, a roaring beast of metal teeth, chewed into the rock face, the noise vibrating through their bones. "Push her harder, Billy," Davidson yelled over the din. Billy, hands slick on the controls, nudged the power. The machine groaned, its pitch changing, straining. Then, a sharp crack, distinct even over the roar, followed by a high-pitched squeal of tortured metal. The machine shuddered violently and stalled. "Damn it, Billy," Davidson stormed over. "Nothing, boss. It just hit something." Sudden, heavy silence fell, broken only by dripping water and ragged breaths. Their headlamps sliced through the darkness, revealing the problem. Where the cutter head had stopped, the rock face was wrong. Not shale, not coal. It was a thick, angry vein the color of a deep bruise, purple-black, marbled with streaks of bilious yellow, and a network of fine red lines like capillaries. And it was wet. Not just damp, but slick, glistening, as if sweating an oily, translucent fluid. Mac reached out a gloved hand cautiously, stopping short. "What in God's name?" he breathed. Davidson nudged a loose chunk with his boot. It yielded slightly, like dense rubber. "Never seen the like. Weird deposit. Probably worthless." He scowled at the damaged cutter head. "All right, try some samples. Document this junk and find a way around it." Chipping at the edges felt wrong. The rock, they started calling it the weeping seam, felt unnaturally warm, even through thick gloves. The air, already heavy, grew thicker, cloying, saturated with a new smell, a coppery tang overlaid with a sweetness like rotting fruit and damp earth. It coated their throats, inducing dry coughs. "Smells bad, boss," Billy mumbled, wiping his nose. "Just minerals leaching," Davidson grunted, but Mac saw his nostrils flare. Back to work. They eventually restarted the miner, angling away from the seam, but the atmosphere had shifted. The usual mine sounds seemed muffled, distant. A low, subliminal thrumming had begun, felt more in the chest than heard, and the oily fluid from the weeping seam was spreading, coating tools, making the floor treacherous. By shift's end, headaches pulsed behind their eyes. A strange, itching rash appeared on exposed skin, pale and slightly raised, the texture disturbingly similar to the weeping seam itself. The next day was exponentially worse. The weeping seam looked subtly larger, the bruise color deeper, angrier. Small, fleshy nodules erupted from the nearby tunnel walls, grayish lumps like closed blisters or fungi. Some swore they saw them quiver. The coppery sweet stench was overpowering. Coughing fits became violent, producing thick, gray phlegm flecked with black particles that tasted vile. The rashes spread, the pale patches growing, developing a faint, web-like pattern. "This ain't no rash, Earl," Mac said grimly, holding his lamp close to his forearm. "It's like the rocks growing on us." Davidson, whose own neck showed the webbing, snapped. "It's fungus, bad air," but his certainty was gone. He kept glancing towards the weeping seam, a strange, thoughtful look in his eyes. Paranoia festered. Men eyed each other suspiciously. Tools vanished. Billy swore he saw a shadow detach itself from the wall near the seam and flow into the darkness. No one believed him, but everyone felt watched. The nodules, multiplying now, seemed to track their movements. Then came the whispers, faint at first, then clearer. Sibilant, wet sounds that bypassed the ears and slid into the brain. They spoke of warmth, peace, release, of merging with something vast and ancient. Come closer, touch, taste, become. Billy broke first. Mac found him sitting before the weeping scene, lamp off, stroking a large, pulsing nodule. His eyes were vacant, drool mixed with the oily seepage trickling from his mouth. He hummed tunelessly, a low, guttural sound harmonizing with the deep thrumming from the rock. When Mac tried to pull him away, Billy shrieked, an alien sound, clawing like an animal. They had to drag him back, babbling about the mother below and the sweet, dark heart. Davison watched with unnerving calm. Delirious, bad air, he repeated, but his gaze drifted back to the seam, almost reverently touching the spreading rash on his own neck. Communication failed. The radio crackled with static, strange clicks, and fragments of the whispers. Mac yelled about contamination, medical emergency, evacuation. Only static answered. They were cut off. Dread solidified. The remaining miners huddled near the elevator, lamps weak. The air was thick enough to taste. Nodules on the walls pulsed rhythmically with the thrumming from the seam. Some had split, oozing fluid more freely. The whispers were constant, insidious. Join us, complete, of whole. Earl, we gotta try shaft B, Mac said raggedly. Break through the rockfall. Davison turned slowly. The transformation was horrifying. The pale, webbed rash covered most of his face, tight and shiny. His eyes were sunken, filmed over, yet held a terrifying alien clarity. He smiled, a stiff, unnatural stretching of lips. Leave? He rasped, his voice lower, wetter. Why? We're finally home. He gestured towards the seam, his hands swollen, veins dark beneath the textured skin. Don't you feel it? The heartbeat? It welcomes us, wants to make us part of his body. Strong, eternal, no more pain, just connection. Become, join. The whispers swirled around Davidson, seeming to emanate from him. Mac recoiled, raising his pickaxe. Stay back, Earl. Whatever that thing is, it's got you. Davison chuckled, a low, gurgling sound. It hasn't got me, Mac. It's completing me. Let it in. Let it reshape you. Suddenly, the radio crackled one last time. Level 7? Davidson? What is your status? Repeat, Black Maw, report. A pause, filled by the thrumming and dripping whispers. Then Davidson's voice, calm, resonant, utterly changed, came over the radio. Was Davidson, the voice gurgled, wetly echoing. Status, optimal. We have made contact. The mountain, it breathes. It understands. It's beautiful down here. We're becoming part of the mountain. We finally understand the heartbeat. No need for rescue. We are home. The transmission dissolved into a final, wet, sucking sound, then silence. Days later, rescue teams reached level 7. The tunnel was sealed, not by rock, but by a thick, pulsating membrane of the bruise-colored rock flesh. It stretched across the entrance like a monstrous scab, warm to the touch, emitting the same low, rhythmic thump-thump that resonated deep in their chests. The air before it reeked of copper and decay. Sensitive microphones pressed against the membrane picked up faint, wet, slithering sounds and a low chorus-like humming from within. Level 7 remained sealed, marked on maps with a stark X and a warning, contaminated zone, do not breach. Sometimes, late at night on level 6, miners still swear they feel it. A faint, rhythmic vibration from the rock below, a slow, steady heartbeat from the deep, dark places where the mountain dreams its ancient, hungry dreams. Okay, here is the expanded version of Echoes from Abyssal Plain in US English, aiming for approximately 7,000 characters in a very scary, creepy tone. Fictional story. The Chimera drilling rig wasn't merely a feat of engineering. It was an isolated steel island, adrift in the boundless emptiness of the Pacific, a testament to humanity's audacious desire to pierce the deepest secrets of the planet. Its mission, to drill into the Abyssal Plain, a realm untouched by sunlight more than 15 miles down. Here, the crushing pressure could twist submarines into scrap in an instant, and darkness was a tangible entity. Dr. Aris Thorne, the brilliant but eccentric lead geologist, had long been consumed by theories of aberrant life forms and ancient energies hidden beneath Earth's crust. The Chimera, with its cutting-edge drilling and sensory technology, was the instrument for his wildest dreams. The mothership, hundreds of miles distant, was their only fragile link to civilization. For weeks, the massive titanium drill bit had gnawed through layer after layer of rock, descending deeper into the black unknown. Sensors relayed a constant stream of data, all within expected parameters. Until one day, the drill's pressure gauges suddenly spiked, then dropped, as if it had punched into something unexpectedly hollow, or unnaturally soft, before continuing its descent. Almost immediately, the hypersensitive, seismic, and acoustic recorders, designed to listen to Earth's faintest murmurs, began to register an anomalous signal. It wasn't geological, it was too rhythmic, too structured. A low, steady thrum thrum thrum, like the heartbeat of some impossible colossal creature, or the workings of an ancient machine deep beneath the abyss. The scientists aboard, initially elated by a new discovery, quickly grew perplexed. Spectrographic analysis of the sound yielded no matches to any known natural phenomena. Its frequency was incredibly low, almost infrasonic, yet it induced a strange unease, an uncomfortable vibration in the chest and at the nape of the neck. Masih, the chief acoustic engineer, paled as she stared at the waveform display. "It's complex," she said, her voice hushed, almost like a language. The nightmares began almost immediately. Not disjointed dreams, but horrifically vivid experiences. Crew members found themselves adrift in pitch-black chasms, surrounded by impossible geometric shapes, sensing the presence of vast, unseen entities, observing them from the crushing darkness. Splitting headaches became commonplace, especially when the strange thrum seemed to intensify, though the instrument still reported a constant amplitude. Tension gripped the rig. Pointless arguments erupted. Paranoia began to seep into every corridor. Whispers started about equipment behaving erratically, about shadowy figures flitting at the edge of vision. Dr. Thorne, however, seemed invigorated. He spent all his time in the lab, eyes, bloodshot from lack of sleep, fixated on the sonic display screens. "Extraordinary," he'd mutter, his voice hoarse. "This isn't a mere natural phenomenon. This is communication, a primordial consciousness beyond all our understanding." He began to neglect all other duties, his appearance growing disheveled, but his eyes always burned with a fanatical light. He ordered the drill team to push deeper despite growing protests even from the rig captain. "We are on the verge of tapping into the very wellspring of life, of the planet itself," Thorne declared in a tense meeting, dismissing safety concerns with a wave of his hand. The sound became increasingly invasive. It was no longer just a vague vibration. It started affecting electronic equipment, causing radio interference and flickering lights. Attempts to filter or decode the sound failed, or worse, yielded more disturbing results. Bizarrely repeating patterns, as if trying to convey a message the human mind couldn't possibly comprehend. David Holloway, the communications officer, desperately tried to log the final events. Log entry, day 21. Thorne has lost it completely. He says it is calling to us, that it wants us to come closer. The thrum is almost unbearable now. I can feel the rig's structure vibrating with it. Lights are strobing constantly. Everyone is terrified, but no one dares defy Thorne anymore. Log entry, day 22. Macy tried to sabotage the drilling system. Thorne had her confined. He said she was negatively affected, but I saw the pure terror in her eyes. Last night, I dreamt of colossal eyes staring at the rig from the darkness below. They had no definite shape, just a presence, vast and ancient. Log entry, day 23. Final. External pressure is spiking. Alarms are screaming. Thorn is laughing, a hideous laugh. He's yelling that it is rising to greet us. The thrum? No, it's a roar now. A mind-tearing roar. God, I see shadows outside the viewports. They're moving up, they're coming. Then, the Chimera rig went utterly silent. All attempts at contact failed. Months later, an unmanned autonomous probe, Persephone, was sent into the abyss to investigate. It cautiously descended into the inky blackness where the Chimera had vanished. As Persephone reached the last known depth of the Chimera, its instruments began to register bizarre phenomena. The ambient magnetic field fluctuated wildly. Water temperature plummeted unnaturally. And then, the pressure skyrocketed to unimaginable levels far exceeding the probe's design limits. Amidst the screech of electromagnetic static and the groans of its titanium hull under duress, Persephone's audio recorder captured an infinitesimally brief soundbite, less than a second long, just before all its signals died. The engineering team on the mothership, after days of painstakingly recovering and analyzing that precious fragment of data, listened to it hundreds of times. In the end, they could only offer one description, a description that chilled all who heard it to the bone, a description that echoed the ultimate horror from the bottom of the world. It sounded like something unimaginably vast, taking a very deep breath. Ember Peak Mine wasn't just old, it was a festering wound in the mountainside, a labyrinth of forgotten tunnels that twisted and coiled like the petrified entrails of some colossal dead beast. Tales clung to it like cobwebs, stories of disappearances, strange echoes, and a palpable sense of being watched that unnerved even the most hardened miners. Foreman Miller, a man whose face was a roadmap of grime and exhaustion, had spent most of his life in Ember Peak's shadow. His crew today consisted of Big John, a quiet giant of a man, and young Davy, barely a man, still green enough to jump at his own shadow in the deeper drifts. Their task for the shift was to blast a new crosscut in the western section, an area local superstition dubbed Bad Penny, where old tales claimed miners had vanished without a trace. Miller, though not a superstitious man, felt a prickle of unease as they set the charges. The air down here felt heavier, colder. After retreating to a safe distance, the detonation ripped through the mountain, a gut-punching roar. Dust billowed thick and choking. When it finally began to settle, instead of a freshly exposed rock face, there was a void, a dark, gaping maw that wasn't on any mine schematic, old or new. "What in the Sam Hill is that?" Big John rumbled, his voice tight with surprise. A chill emanated from the newly opened hole, a bone deep cold, utterly alien to the usual human warmth of the mine. It carried with it the scent of centuries-old dust and something else, something acrid and unsettling, like old bones and damp ancient decay. The support timbers visible just inside the opening, if they were even wood anymore, were petrified black, etched with bizarre swirling symbols and eye-like figures that made the skin crawl. The silence from within was absolute, a heavy, suffocating stillness that seemed to drink the sound of their own ragged breathing. "Never seen this on any map," Miller muttered, his brow furrowed. He played his headlamp beam into the darkness. It barely penetrated a few yards before being swallowed whole. Could be an old collapse working, maybe one of the real old ones, from before proper records. Davy shivered, rubbing his arms. "Boss, I don't like this. It feels wrong, too cold." "Just an old tunnel, kid," Miller said, his voice attempting a gruff reassurance he didn't entirely feel. A flicker of miner's curiosity, or perhaps greed, sparked in his eyes. Might be an untouched vein in there. Gold, silver. Let's take a look. Stick close and be damn careful. They stepped cautiously into the unknown passage, Miller leading, Big John behind him, and Davy bringing up the rear, his headlamp beam darting nervously. The further they advanced, the colder and more oppressive the air became. The ancient timbers, carved with increasingly elaborate and disturbing symbols, seemed to press in on them. the eye-like carvings appearing to follow their movements. Their lamps illuminated primitive rusted mining tools scattered about, pickaxes, shovels, even old-fashioned oil lanterns, all thick with a ghostly layer of dust. Then Big John stopped dead, his lamp fixed on a dark recess. "Sweet mother," he whispered, his voice choked. Illuminated by their combined beams were dozens of bodies. Not skeletons, but desiccated husks, their skin stretched taut and leathery over shrunken frames, clothes tattered and clinging to their emaciated forms. They were preserved with an unnatural, horrifying perfection, as if time itself had recoiled from this place, or some malevolent force had actively prevented their decay. Their faces were frozen in rictus grins of unimaginable terror, mouths agape in silent screams, eyes wide and staring at some unseen horror that had claimed them in their final moments. Their limbs were twisted and broken, arranged in grotesque, ritualistic poses around a crude altar built of piled stones, splintered timbers, and human teeth. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of yellowed, blackened human teeth were embedded in the gruesome structure. Davy cried out, stumbling back and vomiting violently. Miller and Big John stood frozen, their minds struggling to process the sanity-shattering scene. It was a tableau of ancient, depraved sacrifice. The strange symbols were everywhere, carved into the walls, the timbers, even onto the larger stones of the altar. We need to get out of here, now," Miller finally stammered, his voice hoarse with revulsion and a burgeoning fear. As if on cue, Davy, still retching and panicked, fumbled his headlamp. It clattered to the stone floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the dead silence, before rolling into a dark corner, its beam extinguished. Immediately afterward, they heard it. A dry, distinct skittering sound, like claws dragging across rock, echoed from deeper within the blackness of the tunnel ahead. Then another, closer. "What was that?" Davy whimpered, his voice cracking. Miller raised his own lamp, trying to pierce the oppressive darkness. Just rats, probably. But his voice lacked conviction. He knew it wasn't rats. The sound was too large, too deliberate. Suddenly, a pickaxe leaning against a nearby wall clattered to the ground as if shoved. No one had touched it. Miller's heart hammered against his ribs. They were not alone. Those poor bastards hadn't died in a mining accident. They'd been slaughtered. "Run!" Miller yelled, a primal fear gripping him. All three turned and scrambled back towards the entrance they blasted. Skittering sounds behind them grew louder, more urgent, now seeming to come from multiple points in the darkness. Just as they neared the opening, a violent tremor shook the very foundations of the mountain. It wasn't the familiar groan of settling rock. It felt malicious, a deliberate, savage shrug. The sound of grinding, shattering stone filled the air. With a horrifying finality, the newly blasted entrance 100 feet behind where they now stood, the one they'd used to enter Level X, collapsed in a deafening avalanche of rock and debris, sealing them in. Choking dust filled the narrow passage, making them cough and gag. Panic took hold. Miller frantically checked his headlamp. Its beam was already flickering, weaker than before. Big John cursed, his own lamp also sputtering. Davy's was gone. The oppressive darkness pressed in, thick and hungry. The skittering was very close now, echoing all around them in the confined space. A new sound joined it, a series of wet, guttural clicks, like something tasting the air, something predatory and utterly inhuman. Their weak, dying lights offered only fleeting, terrifying glimpses of ancient, damp stone and the encroaching, absolute black. They were trapped in a forgotten tomb, with the ancient, unspeakable thing that had claimed its previous inhabitants, and it was now very, very aware of their presence.